Today on Midnight Mania Sports, we have Celtics reporter for NBC Sports Boston, Chris Forsberg. Chris, thank you for coming on the show today.
No worries. What's up, guys?
So first off, how did you get your career started with NBC Sports Boston?
Well, I'll rewind it back all the way to my college days. I was at Northeastern, and they have the co-op program. And essentially, after your first year of school, you got to sort of go find a job in your field and work for 6 months, and go to class the other 6 months. And I was actually planning on just coming back home. I'm from a little town out in Central Mass called Auburn, and I was trying to just go work for my local newspaper. And a lady there named Kellyanne Murphy said, "Why don't you go apply for the Boston Globe?" And kind of long story short, but I got to spend 5 years there while I was a student and just got some invaluable experience. And it sort of, in a roundabout way, led to me landing at ESPN a few years after I graduated from school. And, cool. Eventually it led me to NBC Sports Boston.
That's an awesome journey, Chris. And, talking Celtics like you do a lot of times on NBC Sports Boston, we have the situation now with Kemba Walker, who is going to be out again versus the Trailblazers tonight after his knee was drained on All-Star Weekend. How important is it to have Kemba out there leading the team, and are you concerned with the injury?
Yeah, I think anytime you have to go in and drain someone's knee and give them an injection to make them feel good, it's a little bit daunting. And yet I trust them that when they say that it's not a long-term concern, that there's no structural damage in there. And I think we've seen in past seasons where they've managed guys, whether it's Al Horford or Marcus Morris, just kind of combating knee injuries with the idea of making sure those guys are upright and ready for the postseason. So the downside is you don't have Kemba out there in some big games as you're kind of making a push for the 2 seed. And yet I think ultimately what this team accomplishes in the postseason hinges on having their best 5 guys healthy. And so, you got to play the long game and just hope that you sort of get through this stretch. And the way Jayson Tatum's playing, you feel pretty confident they can get by and try to get Kemba right for the start of the playoffs.
The Celtics are coming off of a loss to the Lakers and what might have had some bad calls towards the end of the game. What are your thoughts on that fourth quarter?
I wish I'll see if I can find Tommy Heinsohn in our discussion. he can sound off. Look, I don't love the idea of sitting here and wringing hands over the officiating. I think there were some bad calls both ways. Now, certainly, it looked like Jaylen Brown sure was in bounds at one point, and the loose ball on the baseline was interesting too. But ultimately, I don't think it impacted the game as much as some Celtics fans think. They had some opportunities there to close it out. If Gordon Hayward makes a layup, you find a way to win that game. And so you just got to kind of take that loss, move on, don't linger on it. I thought there were a lot more positives to take from that game than necessarily lamenting the refs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the Celtics opted not to make a move at the trade deadline. Do you think there is still holes in this team that need to be filled, or should they have made a move at the deadline? Kind of what is your ideal situation with the roster, and what is your opinion on the roster?
Yeah, so, look, I get it. There's a lot of Celtics fans that flood my Twitter mentions upset about that they didn't make a move or that they haven't got a buyout guy. I think ultimately, like I said about, getting Kemba healthy, what they accomplish in the postseason will hinge a lot more on their top 5 guys being healthy and Daniel Tice and Enes Kanter and Robert Williams than necessarily anyone they could have picked up. Now, I would feel a lot more confident if I knew who their 8th man in the playoff rotation was. I don't quite know if that's Grant Williams or Romeo Langford or whether Robert Williams can come back and be a guy in that center rotation. But certainly as rotations shrink in the postseason, I think they're okay as long as the starters continue to be as good as they have been. I will be curious to see, they still have some time here. They can still consider a move to sort of pad out the end of that roster, but the buyout market is pretty thin on players that you feel comfortable throwing in there. And ultimately, I just don't know if it'll change the trajectory of the season all that much.
You mentioned Jayson Tatum earlier, and he has proven to be a really number one focus for the Celtics right now, the guy to give the ball to and an all-star as well. How big of an impact has Tatum had on this team?
Yeah, it's been cool to see. I think we all sat here and said, he didn't make as much of a leap in his sophomore season as many of us expected. I had some pretty lofty expectations for him coming into this year, but he's exceeded pretty much all of them based on the way he's played the last month. Whether it was being named an all-star or the 41-point game against New Orleans, he's just really gone to another level. and to see him against teams like the Clippers and the Lakers and be the best player on the floor when you're playing guys like Kawhi and LeBron, that's really neat to see. I think he's got a very bright future. I don't think that's the hottest take out there, but I do think he can be like a top 5 guy in this league eventually if he's doing what he's doing now at 21. And I think it's just so important. Like if the Celtics are going to truly compete for a title, they need to have a top flight guy. And as good as Kemba is and Gordon Hayward and Jaylen Brown, you need that elite player to really lean on in big moments. And Jayson just might be that guy eventually.
Do you think Kyrie Irving kind of stunted his sophomore growth, that kind of something that you expected?
Yeah, I think the team as a whole, I don't want to get in on one guy. Certainly it's easy to look at Kyrie's absence this year and think, wow, this sure looks a lot better. It flows a lot better this year. But I do think a lot of the reason for the growth of both Jayson Tatum and Jaylen Brown is sort of the lessons they learned last year and the learning like how difficult it can be and sort of going out there and just doing it yourself and embracing team success when it happens and pulling for each other. And so I don't know if necessarily if those guys would have been as good this year if they didn't go through what they did last year. And so, and I think in a weird way, Kyrie probably helped that, but certainly last year, no one played to their potential because of just how much everybody was sort of looking out for themselves instead of each other.
And the Celtics currently hold the number 3 seed in the Eastern Conference. How far do you believe this team can realistically go?
So, I mean, maybe it's just unique because this year is so different. Like without Durant and, now Kyrie shutting down, the East is so open, and without a juggernaut like the Golden State Warriors out West. And I know the LA teams are very good, but you don't even have to worry about them until you get to the finals. I think the Celtics match up with just about anybody in the East. Look, you try to put off seeing the Bucks as long as possible because of how good Giannis is. But especially if they can land that 2 seed, I think they're really positioned to put themselves in position to get to the NBA Finals, depending on how it breaks in the East Finals against the Bucks. But I don't think it's necessarily like coming into the year. I thought maybe second round, and maybe if things broke right, you can sneak into the East Finals. I think maybe I'm a little bit more bullish on the idea that they can be in that final East matchup and see what happens from there.
What do you think is the answer for Giannis or Embiid for the Celtics if they have somebody to stop them?
Yeah, cross your fingers, close your eyes. I don't know. It's like I don't know if they necessarily have a Giannis stopper on the team. I'm sure you'll throw as many of your big bodies out there as you can, and maybe you can get away with Tice playing some minutes and throwing some Shemi Ojale and Grant Williams. And I think at the end of the day, what you do is you let Giannis get his 35, 40 points, whatever the crazy number might be, and you try to make sure the supporting cast doesn't beat you. And in recent seasons, Chris Middleton has really done a number on the Celtics. But if you can keep him and Eric Bledsoe and sort of the supporting cast quiet, maybe you give yourself a chance even if Giannis has big nights.
Yeah, and the East now is mostly going to go through Boston, hopefully, for the Celtics, because Ben Simmons now is, with his back injury, doesn't look too good for him. So the Sixers are going to kind of lose Ben Simmons there, but Embiid is still going to be like one of those top centers in the East.
Yeah, and like the thing for me is like, I think if the Celtics had their druthers, they don't want to match up with Philly. I think the worst thing that could happen is if the Celtics stick at 3 and then Philly somehow, because they don't have Ben Simmons, somehow slides to 6, and then you're looking at like a first-round matchup against a team you just don't pair well against, and especially by that point, depending on if Simmons gets back out there. And if Embiid is playing to his level, he's probably the second best player in the East behind Giannis, and it's just a tough matchup for the Celtics. So I think you sit there and cross your fingers that they sort of find a way to float and tread water and still end up in that 4-5 mix instead of necessarily falling down because they don't have Ben Simmons out there.
Chris, I'd like to thank you for your time today and joining us on Midnight Mania Sports, and best of luck to you in the future and for the Celtics this season.
Thanks, y'all. Shout anytime.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.